Thank you very much for providing us with this time slot where we can somehow reflect on how AI is impacting our lives and how this technology is approaching our fields uh, in that uh, in that manner. My name is Francisco Javier Garcia Gomez, Javier Garcia. I come from I will be giving the point of view from the perspective of VET Center, since I work for Inercia Digital, as Dragana said. It is an international VET Center of Excellence, providing hybrid face-to-face and online teaching and courses. We are specialized in digital competences, offering courses related to drones, 3D printing, virtual reality, robotics, and now AI, of course. And it will be a pleasure to both moderate this webinar and to give just, what our feelings of how are we experiencing and being witness of this change of era, let's say. So to begin with, I would like, since I introduced myself already, I would like to the rest of the speakers, both Silvia and Obren, please to introduce both yourself, your background, and why not to tell us how AI has entered your educational or professional environment. So Silvia, if you want to start.
Yes, thank you so much, Javier, and thank you to Dragana for organizing this very challenging webinar and discussion, let me say. So I'm Silvia Cosimato. I come from Italy, from the University of Naples Federico II, which is based, as you know, in Naples, so in the south of Italy. I'm an associate professor in management, and since around 5 or 4 years ago, we are dealing with smart technologies and artificial intelligence, in particular, implementation in managerial decision making. But one of my main research topic is innovation in general, and for sure digital innovation. As a professor, I'm used to deal with traditional, let me say, approaches to higher education programs. But as professor, we also have a lot of interest in VIT education, because we host a lot of Master of Science program. And these kind of programs are also dealing with digital technologies for sure, and especially during the last 2 years on the application and the use of artificial intelligence into managerial scenarios. But we are also committed with some specific VIT program as, let me say, expert of education, together with regional programs or even national programs. So this is in a nutshell my background. And I'm very happy to describe my approach as a professor with this kind of stuffs or tools, because at first it was a bit disruptive, especially during the COVID, because during the COVID, as professors, we were witness of a paradigmatic change, because we were pushed into a new era without completely understanding what was happening. And this was the point in which we switched our approach not only to the use of technology in traditional educational curricula, but also we switched our approach to pedagogical processes. And what can I say? And what I want to say is that artificial intelligence for sure is something that can support us as an infrastructure, as a technical and technological infrastructures that can support and can enhance our structural approach to education, but it is also something that goes beyond this structural approach. It's something systemic that is changing the whole education scenario, let me say, because for exploiting the potential, I think, of this technology, it is important to start working on the pedagogical approaches, to change our mindset and to strategically embed this kind of technology in our policy, in our educational policies, in our educational strategies, and so on and so on. And for starting, I can say that what really lacks in these ways is the support of our university governance for some aspect, because probably sometimes standards, laws, and also the governance, the institution, let me say, are not so fast as innovation. And even though we as professors are committed with the needs, the challenges, and what this kind of revolution, let me say, is calling from us, institutions are slower than us. And I think that at this point, it is no more possible to not be supported by specific policies and ethics approach to the use and the implementation of this kind of tools in our, let me say, daily educational activities. But this is, I think that this is essential also to support not also students with the proper and the ethical use of this kind of tools, but also to support colleagues and also non-academic staff in starting using in the proper, ethic, clear, and transparent way the potential, the several potential possibility that this kind of technology can give to our work. So I can say that artificial intelligence in education and in higher education can be related to 3 or 4 keywords. And the first one, as I said, is pedagogy and the change and transformation of pedagogical approaches, ethics, and policies, because it is essential to regulate in some way the use of this kind of technology in order to share the same language, let me say, the same rules, and to stay always fair with this kind of tools. And the balancing between a technological-based approach and a human-based approach to artificial intelligence. And probably this is the real challenge, because adding the potential of this new technology to our pedagogical approaches means not to reduce the intellectual potential of us as professor or of our student, but to enhance the intellectual potential and to design new projects, new programs, new learning and teaching styles according to this renewed potential of us as humans. So it is not something so easily to deal with. And in this sense, I also like to report the words of Yuval Harari, which is a very recent book, which name is Nexus, something, a brief history of information networks from the Stone Age to artificial intelligence. It is very focused on the potential of artificial intelligence, and he underlines that it is not something about just using and exploiting the technical potential of these smart technologies, but it is something related to really understand how we can be supported and how can we use at our best for innovating our daily life or our educational life, these kind of new technologies. And another very important implication in my opinion is for us as researchers, because for sure we are very focused on the impact of artificial intelligence on students' life and how we can support them in properly use this kind of tool in order to be transparent, ethical in doing their project works and so on and so on. But sometimes we forget that us as researchers can be supported by artificial intelligence tools. But also in this case, the point is how to better use this kind of tools, because its potential is very, very big, is huge. But also in this case, the fairness and right competencies and approach to deal with these kind of tools is essential. Also because sometimes we are used to think that artificial intelligence can be something that can improve our efficiency and our productivity, also in terms of research stuff, in terms of papers, in terms of books that we can write, and so on and so on. But also in this case, I'd like to mention the words of a Yale anthropologist, and her name, I don't remember exactly her name, but she said that we can use artificial intelligence for scientific research in each kind of domain. Can be the managerial domain, the STEM domains, and so on and so on. But the point is how to effectively use them and to correctly use them in order to improve our abilities and not just working on production, because we are so focused on the progression of our careers and so on and so on. So I think that we must invest not only in financial terms, but we must invest in terms of knowledge shifting, in terms of a paradigm shifting to not consider artificial intelligence just something technical, but as something that can be an artifact that can support us as human. So in a nutshell.
I think Silvia, it was a very nice way to kickstart the webinar. Indeed, I believe you covered most of the topics we are going to deal with in the next hour. But at a glance, but thank you so much for your perspective. You mentioned, of course, key aspects of what we are dealing with in our daily life, also in the VT sector. But before we continue with the discussion, I would like to hear from Obren to see, to introduce himself, of course, to get to know him a bit deeper. And also, apart from speaking about the same thing, but from your perspective, Silvia mentioned, for example, the AI is playing a support or should play a support role. Do you agree with that? And how has your experience been regarding this statement, let's say?
Hi. So yeah, first of all, hi, I'm Obren. I'm from Belgrade, Serbia. However, I live in Amsterdam, and I've been going to university here in the Netherlands. I would have to say that I fully agree with Silvia regarding that AI should be used more as a tool. And I will say, from a student's perspective, one challenge we face, of course, tools such as ChatGPT really help us in our learning. You know, it's really easy to get right information and access to information very quickly. But the problem is that sometimes what I've noticed is people switch off their brains when they use these tools and they just take whatever is taken for granted. and just take it on the go, rather using it to support their ideas and their beliefs. And that's something definitely that early on I was also I was also doing, and it took time and the realization that okay, actually, I should not take what this tool is giving me for granted, rather use it to help me and help me actually learn and understand what I'm doing rather than just performing a task for me. So in a way, I definitely do agree with Silvia.
All right. From my point of view, because I've seen the AI implementation on this thing becoming viral from two different perspectives. From the EU projects such as AI4VET4AI and so on and so forth, and from the from our Spanish VET center and in terms of training, teaching, and processes. And regarding EU projects, here, for example, we've been able to explore AI in a strategic and a scalable way, aligning it with institutional goals and capacity building. It goes slower but steadily. And on the other hand, on the practical way in the classroom, it's being more immediate. The practical effects in the classroom where we experiment with interactive tools, adaptive learning platforms, and gamified methodologies. But in both cases, I believe and I agree with you that AI is not a catalog of tools. They are not just tools, but a catalyst of rethinking how we approach teaching, particularly regarding problem solving, digital interactivity, and of course, critical thinking. Trying not to switch off our brains, as you said, Obren. So when we say AI in education, what does that mean concretely in your environment? For example, for us, because our sector is the main objective is to enhance employability and try to have the higher radius as we can. So it is quite helpful to have the close relationship and connections between industry and our centers that we currently have, because it allows us to reshape our programs at a faster pace than other educational stages, as Silvia said. For universities, I believe it takes more time to adapt their curricula regarding the industry needs because of bureaucracy and a lot of papers and stages, and it takes forever. But for us, since we have some kind of modular programs, we can insert and modify modules depending on the industry needs. So it is quite helpful, and I believe, I mean, VET centers have already been very famous for being a nice way to get into the labor market, and I mean, students coming from these centers are really demanded, at least in our country, in Spain. So what about you? When we say AI in education, what does that mean concretely in your environment?
Okay, it is very interesting to discuss about it because, as you said, Javier, for sure, the university environment is not so quick in changing, but we can approach this kind of innovation according to a bottom-up perspective. Let me say, we as professors, as researchers, are trying to change our way to approach more than the curricula, the way we organize lessons, the way we organize not only lessons, but also some laboratory activities. For us, this is the first year that we have activated a lab on AI application to managerial decision making. And students were and are still are very happy to take part into this kind of laboratory activities because For sure, they are complementary to the traditional, let me say, curricular activities. And they don't have books, don't have paper, but they just have the opportunity to test the way to approach AI tools to inform strategies, to analyze data, and so on and so on. And they can also be in touch with some local, regional, and national startups and companies which are dealing with this kind of technology to manage their businesses. And this is the first step, I think, that we are taking to change our approach to technologies in general. And I think that it is very important because our students, and as almost all Italians, and I can say all European citizens, are nowadays very focused on artificial intelligence because it is a buzzword, you know. And the point is that most of them are not aware about what artificial intelligence really is. And this is true also for students, because sometimes they use ChatGPT, Gemini, and a lot of other different AI-based app, but they are not conscious about what they are doing and the potential, the strategic, let me say, potential of this kind of tools. So our mission, let me say, is to go deeper and to make them more aware about what they are doing and how they must deal with this kind of tool in order to be not a passive users of this kind of technologies, but to govern and to contribute to the enhancement of the AI applications and potential, let me say.
Thank you, Silvia. Indeed, it has a lot of potential. We were discussing last week about how it helps in terms of diversity and inclusion. And I mean, it will be easier, for example, to generate captions in a matter of seconds, subtitles, and other types of accessibility features. But also, on the other hand, it's like a double-edged sword. The already existing gap we have between, for example, elder or people coming from rural areas with no tech knowledge, compare them to youngsters that were already born with this kind of technology under their arms. So, this is talking regarding both teacher trainings and students, because it is related to all the target groups. What about you, Obren? Anything else you want to add regarding what AI in education means to you and you're taking into account your point of view?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, I had the opportunity where I was in, let's say, school and university, and in both time periods before AI and after AI. So I had the opportunity to do some certain projects without AI, let's say, at this point, old and long way of having to manually do research online, having to, let's say I pick a topic and then I search up a phrase or whatever, and then I have to scroll through websites and find which one fits, and then read a whole I don't know, Wikipedia page and realize that I was reading the wrong thing. Whereas now it's whatever I need, I just ask ChatGPT and it gives me exactly the answer that I'm looking for. So in a way, it's really helped speed up some processes. That some time-consuming aspects of the research have been minimized almost by, I'd say, 90+%. And in a way, it's really helped. But then comes that aspect which I was talking about earlier, that because it's so simple, it's easy to automatically rely on it. As soon as it gives you an answer, you're just like, okay, sure, this is it. I'm happy. I'm satisfied with this. and move on, rather than actually reading it thoroughly and seeing is this actually what it is. Because one aspect that I realized after a while of using tools such as ChatGPT is that sometimes they can be, speaking about ChatGPT specifically, it can be very agreeable with you. Sometimes I'll ask it something and it will be like, yes, certainly, and then gives me a whole bunch of information. And I know that even though it might be some correct information, it's not exactly what I'm looking for. And then I will tell it, well, actually, I was looking for something more like this. And then he'll be like, oh yeah, you're completely right. Thanks for correcting me, you know. Whereas it should have probably done that in the first place. And when you don't take these things into consideration, just take the information as complete, things like this can come up, and depending what the situation is, you know, problems can come up. But overall, I would say it's been a great improvement in the education.
Yeah, that's a strong point, definitely. Talking about accuracy of these tools, right? And although I'm sure it will get better as time passes, and the percentage of wrong answers will decrease. Although that will happen, we will still need to double check everything, right? And not rely on those answers. We've been mentioning the research field many times from the beginning. Silvia, you mentioned that the main topics you usually do some research of is about how AI is impacting students, and also you have mentioned that as researchers you also look for ways of how AI can support you. What are the research trends or concerns related to AI in education? I mean, how is AI impacting the research and academic field from your point of view?
Okay, yes, it's a challenging point because all of us as researchers are debating how we can correctly approach artificial intelligence and how can we intersect its potential with our creativity. And probably the point is that artificial intelligence for us as researchers can be a creativity enabler because for sure it is something that can support us if we are trained to use it, if we have the right literacy about its functioning, its potential, and so on and so on. And if we recognize how to correctly use. I can give you some example because as Obren was saying, it is sometimes this kind of tools are so in line with our thought and with what we are trying to do. But the point, in my opinion, is also what we are asking and how we are asking something to the tool. I can go through these saying that we must study, we must research before using this kind of tools. So we must have skilled in terms of what we want to do. We must have a clear research design. We must be sure about the topic we want to investigate in order to give to, let me say, in this case, the tool, the right information and give them the right, if possible, sources to be searched in order to complement our ability. Because the point is that, for sure, if we want to go further with our intellectual potential and with our research, we can be supported for sure, but we cannot be substituted by artificial intelligence. There is a growing number, let me say, of papers or even books completely written by ChatGPT, or for a scientific paper, there is Jenny, I think this is the right name, app that can support you with writing a scientific paper. But okay, I think that it can be an exercise for us as researchers in order to understand how this kind of smart, let me say, technologies can deal with human activities. But it's just an exercise, in my opinion, but this is my personal opinion. Because, okay, it is still funny to read something completely written by this kind of app. But what is the contribution that is adding to the research and to the scientific domain in which this kind of research has been created? I think that probably the contribution is more evident in other kind of scientific fields, just like the medical research, the really scientific research, because there is a great potential, artificial intelligence has a great potential in terms of data analysis in diagnostics, for example, but also the results of this kind of application must be interpreted by us in order to be communicated to someone. And fortunately, this someone is still a human being, is still a person. And so there is a dialogue, I think, that must be cultivated between us as humans and this kind of tool.
All right, interesting. Very interesting indeed. Let's move on now to some pedagogical, let's say, and institutional changes that you are seeing or expecting in the future as AI continues to develop. So from the VET perspective, although we were making the change already to move from the teacher-centered to a learner-centered methodologies and approaches, artificial intelligence are paramount for making it easier and faster, and it is enabling how can I say, it is being easier to personalize the learning and teaching process for our students. We all know the time we need to spend dealing with bureaucracy and preparing lessons and correcting exams and so on and so forth. So for sure, it is making us more efficient, right? Preparing, motivating, and personalized educational material that it would have taken ages to prepare. You can have it now in a couple of minutes, just preparing the prompt, the right prompt, and institutional wise, to support this transition. I believe all of us are making an investment, right, in digital upskilling and curricular innovation. Teachers and staff need the training and confidence, as you said previously, to use them effectively and meaningfully. But we all know that there is also that fear in the classroom about having less knowledge than students in this regard, right? And also the fear of how to assess things that have been made thanks to AI in different contexts. Also students-wise, at the VT level, we are trying to integrate transversal digital competences, trying to embed AI-related content where relevant, and trying to redesign already existing programs. And infrastructure-wise, although it is a step to be taken for sure, but since the investment needed is quite high, it will take more time. But I'm sure it will come at some point to insert AI internally in our centers. So how does it compare or look like from the student perspective, Obren? Because you said that you have been like you had like a half a degree without AI and half the other half using AI. So did you experience any change regarding methodologies from the teachers you had and types of activities and approaches they used?
Yeah, so honestly, the methodologies and type of, let's say, classwork or project work didn't really change because honestly, they weren't really too happy about us using AI. They kind of enforced, let's say, checking tools to see if our work was created using AI or not. And so, in a way, we were stopped from using AI in terms of, let's say, if we have to write a report or write an essay, they would have checkers. Where we could use AI was in the research aspect to, let's say, quickly learn something new that we were looking for. And in that regard, it was used by us. However, it wasn't something that was really incorporated within the actual, let's say, way of teaching, which I do think should be changed. Because if there's a tool that allows us students to learn something faster, I don't see why it wouldn't be used. I do understand the argument of, well, we're there to learn and we're there to write the essay. So, what's the point of using the AI tool to write it for you if the purpose of writing the essays is to learn? So, I do understand that perspective. But yeah, generally, I do think that in a way it should be incorporated into the way of teaching and the way it's being used. However, I think it's still very early on to define what's the best way and the best approach to actually do that. And I think there's no one clear answer. I believe it's more of a matter of trial and error, testing one way out, seeing what the results are, testing a different way, and then comparing different results. Because personally, uh, even though I understand the point of like we shouldn't be using AI to write our essays because we're there to learn. On the other hand, we're there to learn to prepare us for the real world. And in the real world, first of all, we probably aren't going to be writing essays unless we go into a research-based field. But on the other hand, also in the real world, we'll have access to these tools. So as long as we're using the tools critically and not just copy pasting the text from ChatGPT directly into our essays, I personally don't see why it should be a problem to use these tools.
That's indeed a controversial issue. We had I remember it was like some months ago. I don't know if the rest of the partners remember this discussion about whether using AI or not to create some learning material we were creating. So I believe that's something happening everywhere. And that's where that dichotomy between affinity and phobia with technology rises, right? But yeah,
sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to briefly explain one part of what I was trying to say. The important part is to know the knowledge of what you're putting down on the paper. And if you know what you're putting down on that paper, as long as that is true, my opinion, it doesn't matter if it took me 1 hour to write it myself manually, or if it took 45 seconds for ChatGPT to generate it, probably better than I would have personally written it. I just wanted to clarify that.
All right, that's nice to hear. I believe we will have different kind of opinions here and there, but that's nice. So it is clear that we have those teachers with affinity with technology and AI, and we have those teachers trying to ban somehow and forbid the use of AI within their classrooms and subjects. Silvia, in which category are you?
Definitely in the first category, for sure. But I'm in line with Obren because it is not a matter of using or not, but how to use it. Because for sure, it is so simple to copy and paste the results of ChatGPT research and so on and so on. But the point, in my opinion, is to be able to design your project work, your paper, and to organize the knowledge related to the topic you want to deal with, and then split the work, in my opinion, in subsequent tasks in order to be supported by AI-based tools in one task after another, in order to be sure that you are giving to it the right information, the right rules, let me say, and for sure to check the results and understand if you can use it or not. Reorganizing it and be in line with your, for sure, ethical approaches. And I want also to add that it is very important, no matter if you are a professor, a researcher, or a student, with the policies, the guidelines that, for example, the journal in which you want to publish have set the policies and the guidelines of your university, if you have some. Because, for example, as you, Javier, just said, as a part of a public university, are debating how to approach and how to integrate the use of artificial intelligence in our curricula, but also in our, let me say, general standards and rules, educational rules, I mean, and there are still several professors, but also members of the institutional committee that are not open to regulate the use of artificial intelligence. And these make us unable to have shared and agreed guidelines. So it is in charge of each of us as professor to define with our students the guideline and the way to ethically and to transparently use this kind of tools. Because if you agree with them how to use it, I think it can be more, or it can be easily to work on the same level and to avoid any kind of misuse or any kind of, how to say, not ethical approach to this kind of technologies. Because what is really important, in my opinion, is also to respect and to protect the academic integrity. And when I say academic, I mean the integrity of both student and professor, because it is very important to, as you said just before, to invest not only into concrete technological infrastructures. And for us as a public university, it is not so easy, because we must to wait for the institutional time, and to also we are dependent in some way from national funding. And sometimes, especially in this specific period of time in Italy, the public funding is not so open to support more and more education, and in particular the evolution and the innovation in public education, because we are a lot of expense constraints and so on and so on. It is a common problem, I think. But the most important, I think, investment is in literacy and in making not only the youngest generation, but also the elders one able to be willing and open to, I mean, understand what does the use of this kind of tools means for education, and not be scared about their potential, and not be scared to be substituted by, for example, ChatGPT or something like that, but to be also in this case creative enough to use ChatGPT, Gemini, or other kind of smart technologies in order to enhance creativity, scientific knowledge, and so on and so on. I think that it is a question of time. We need time to change our mindset and to also, let me say, institutionalize this kind of change, because now probably we are not still ready to do this.
No, I completely agree with you, indeed, because apart from being part of the VET sector, I'm also a primary education teacher, and I have many contacts locally. And a bit ago, I contacted many people in different, public, semi-private, and private institutions, and none of them were doing nothing regarding AI. They didn't have like a sort of committee trying to stay in the front line, or at least trying to do something to adapt their programs to the actual needs. So of course we need some time, but the thing is that technology is always progressing at a quicker pace than educational system do. But anyway, that's an eternal thing.
May I add something, Javier? And I think that this is an interesting example of how a public university here in Italy is strategically, let me say, approaching artificial intelligence. And this example comes from the Politecnico di Milano, let me say. So it is a very important scientific university here in Italy, and it has started to use artificial intelligence to reduce, for example, the student dropouts rate. So this is a concrete example to how to integrate this kind of tools, not only in, let me say, traditional educational activities, but also in the governance and in the strategic governance of public universities. And it is a very good best practice here in Italy that, in my opinion, should be well known and well communicated to all of us in order to be inspired and to try to align to what they are doing currently.
Yeah, definitely. I remember all the panelists we had in Belgrade a bit ago, and all these best practices are inspiring and are really a thing. So, Obren, where do you see AI in the next 5 to 10 years from your point of view? What are you expecting?
That's a difficult question, because no one has the, let's say, clear answer to that. And my opinion isn't a clear, set in stone answer, you know? Anything could happen with AI in the next 5 to 10 years. What I hope AI becomes in the next 5 to 10 years is a strong tool that's being used to help us rather than replace us. Because the way it's rapidly improving, it definitely can replace us in 5 to 10 years, maybe even sooner. Who knows with that? But what it is currently, at least, is a tool that helps us speed up tasks and can help us automate certain tasks. And definitely, already a lot of job positions are in risk of being completely replaced, and things that before would take a team of, let's say, 10 people can now be done by 1 to 2 people using AI. That's definitely true. But speaking on, and that's another problem on its own. However, speaking on AI as its own thing. I hope that it's a tool that keeps progressing, that helps us even further, and is used as a tool to help us rather than replace us. Will that actually happen? Who knows? None of us know that, but that's my hope for the future, let's say.
Yeah, I mean that happened in all the revolutionary technologies when these technologies came up, and same fears arised when internet came up, right? And we're experiencing some similar situations. For VT centers, I would say the VT sector is going to play a paramount role in the next years. I mean, we have already started to see a rise in the importance of our centers and type of education because it is fast and it is adapted to industry, or it tries to be as much adapted to industry as we can. But hopefully in the near future, there will be a better relationship between developers of these apps and technology, educators and policymakers, to ensure that this technology is better linked to educational needs and that regulatory frameworks support a sustainable integration at a quicker pace. Although it is complicated, as we previously said, and this has always been an everlasting and eternal issue, but hopefully it will get better in the near future. So that's my point of view and how I see it. I believe we have we are a key component of the next years in terms of reskilling and upskilling people, so they can, for those people trying to get to the labor market as soon as possible, and for those trying to get new knowledge so that they can re-enter the labor market. I think a VET sector is going to be quite important. So what about you, Silvia? What do you think?
Yes, Javier, I totally agree with you and with your point of view on VET Center, because I think that the upskilling and reskilling is very important nowadays, and probably especially in the very next future. I don't know if in 5 years or probably less, because 5 years nowadays is a long period of time to be able to understand or to imagine what will happen. And I want also to add that together with VET centers, also universities has a big and important things to do and mission, let me say, which is properly, let me say, skilling and preparing students to the real and the current job market needs. Because sometimes there is a big gap between what we do with students and what we and the kind, let me say, of abilities and skills we try to transfer to them, and what the real job market needs. And to bridge, let me say, this gap, for sure, these kind of smart technologies are essential, and it is essential also to approach them not only in a, let me say, theoretical way, so making them able, okay, artificial intelligence has been created in blah 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 blah, not, but what does is artificial intelligence and how you can use it to perform your professional activities and to improve your professional performances, let me say. And I think it's very important. And this is the point that we must discuss now and in the future, in order to, especially for a public education institutions to rearrange and to reshape, let me say, our approach to education. Because sometimes, I mean, especially I want to say this, especially in Italy, we are very focused on the theory, and we are so good in dealing and creating new theory, but in the end, how to implement and how to let me say, translate this kind of theory in practical approaches is not so easy. And students sometimes lack in this kind of practical approach to, let me say, problem solving, which is essential for dealing with each kind of professional scenarios or professional activity. And in this case, the support and the commitment of all the university world, let me say, is essential, because we must be supported as professor also by all the other professionals that are into the university ecosystem. And I think that in this case also a dialogue and an ongoing dialogue with the business world and with, for example, entrepreneurs, researchers, but not academic researchers, is very, very important.
Yeah, definitely. We have been indeed saying statements that we dropped down in the first workshop we had a week ago. For those who do not know, we did a internal workshop to discuss and do some SWOT and PEST analysis about the AI role in VET sector. And, you know, we talked about adaptability, good connections with industry, and how this sector can adapt in that quick pace. So yeah, it's funny to hear these thoughts again. So from our side, I think we covered many of the basic and important topics we wanted to discuss. I would like to open now a short time slot for questions and answers, just in case somebody wants to say something or add any kind of suggestion.